It cannot be discussed.
No. Okay. Hi, my name is Steven Rabinowitz. I am a Super Bowl holic, as you all should be as well. We are pumped for this show. We are always pumped at this time of year, no matter who the teams are. So let's get this started. I'm Steven Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
I'm Anthony Strait, and all I'm doing is I hope it's a good game Sunday. And when does baseball season start?
We will not be talking about Pete Alonso to the Mets tonight, but congratulations for your one more year of Pete Alonso in City Fields.
Yeah. Well, it's a Giants fan in me speaking right now, considering who's playing on Sunday.
Dirty Birds.
We'll talk about that. But
Dirty Birds.
Okay. Save the jokes for the show, though. That's what I've learned. And the second paragraph of the show. So welcome to the On the Sports Lens Super Bowl 59 preview. So, with halftime performer Kendrick Lamar and the team with the champion DNA in the AFC Champion Chiefs and the team with all the stars, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're meeting for the second time in 3 years on sports' biggest stage. We'll talk angles for each unit, along with talking about some of the coaching hires for teams who couldn't even sniff the second week of January if they showed it to them. And we talk about the euphoria we could have had with Eli Manning in the Hall of Fame. So you know what to do if you're watching live at facebook.com/onthesportslines or youtube.com/onthesportslines on demand. Comment and mustard!
And like and subscribe, please.
Like and subscribe, absolutely. Now, it takes a lot, and I mean a hell of a lot, to knock football out of our opener. But then last Saturday happened, around 11 p.m. Eastern, when Shams Charania tweet said, the Dallas Mavericks are trading Luka Dončić, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick, sources tell ESPN. It was such a big trade that he had to release his second trade to say that he hadn't been hacked, as any good journalist would do in their 2025 manual. But yes, Luka Dončić, who led his team to an NBA Finals appearance last season, trades the Maverick blue, or whatever color they're wearing this week, for Laker gold, or whatever they call it this week as well. In the first ever trade involving two reigning all-NBA players traded for each other, and pretty much a nothing burger. Sorry, Max Christie, you've had a good year, but we're not going to talk about you tonight. Of other stuff. All that being said, Anthony, holy bleep, what an insane deal.
Let me tell you, I don't know what it is. I made a joke with Rabbi about this. I don't know what it is with me and getting out of the shower that I check my phone and see something blockbuster happening. The first time I did it, Juan Soho was going to the Mets. And even I thought that was somebody got hacked when that was tweeted out there. I literally looked at this and I see Sham say, yes, this is real. And within 10 minutes, the reaction from the NBA players themselves lets you know what the hell is going on. At this point, I think even Josh Hart had to ask, did Shams get hacked? Or basically, Anthony Edwards said it best. No one's safe. He's scared as F, if you know what I mean. I'm looking at this, and this is the angle I took from. I think the Dallas Mavericks were a little skeptical about giving Luka Dončić this supermax contract that he was going to be eligible for this summer. $345 million would have been more than what the Boston Celtics gave to Jason Tatum as far as supermax contracts. His is at $319 million. And from a business standpoint, I understand that is a lot of money to commit to one player. But you understand this. Luka's 26 years old. He's a generational talent and a guy who led you to the finals just last season. No disrespect to Kyrie Irving, by the way, who had a big part in that as well. But he's also the guy that got you to the conference finals 2 years prior to and was literally averaging 28 points a game. In the 22 games he has been able to play for the Mavericks this season, obviously he's been out with with injuries. But what I don't feel comfortable with is all the stuff that's coming out as far as his conditioning. When I'm looking at this as, okay, Dallas, you've known about Luka Dončić's issues with his conditioning and having to play himself in the basketball shape. It wasn't an issue all this time, and it wasn't an issue last season, clearly, when he's been all NBA. Now, all of a sudden, you make the trade, and now it's a problem. I just think it's something that I think the Mavericks are not helping themselves. And keep it on, this is the same front office that let Jalen Brunson walk for nothing. That moved
4 years, $100 million is nothing in NBA trades, and he is now a consistent He's now a consistent All-Pro.
He's a starter in the All-Star game this year. So, they moved Kristaps Porzingis. Porzingis helps the Celtics win a championship. By the way, at the Dallas Mavericks suspense last June, this is a front office that's right now, the last couple of years, has not had a great reputation. By the way, fans, shame on you for the death threats. That is absolutely crossing the line. I get emotion, but there's no need for that.
No.
But the Dallas Mavericks just made a trade for the now with Anthony Davis, who's an all-star and a great player himself. But there's a reason why he's been a 1B for pretty much most of his career. And when you look at how LeBron is playing, it's like, okay, 40-year-old LeBron James is still the best player on the Lakers, and they've seen enough to determine that Anthony Davis just not the guy who's going to carry this franchise moving forward. And the Lakers got
that has nothing to do with this trade. Hold on. I'm going to stop the Anthony Davis slander right there because it has nothing to do. But no. It has nothing to do with the Lakers. I know you're not slandering him, but that's not the Lakers. I'm just going to interrupt you here. That's not the Lakers deciding that they would not want to get rid of Anthony Davis under almost any circumstance except this.
But here's the thing. When moving Anthony Davis and Luka Dončić, that's really the only hit that the Lakers took on this trade. I mean, you got to make this trade without question. But it just shows the Mavericks' willingness to move on from Luka, but they didn't get much else outside of Anthony Davis in this trade. And I think that's the stunning part. And for the Mavericks, I would think if you're going to move a guy like Luka Dončić, you're going to at least demand even close to a king's ransom in the process because you know teams are willing to give that to you. But they didn't even do that. I mean, look, it's a steal for the Lakers without question. They have their franchise player once LeBron hangs it up. But the Dallas Mavericks, I mean, this front office, in the last couple of years, I don't even know what to make of this. And Mark Cuban, who don't have majority ownership of this team anymore. Nope. And he said that he would not have made this trade. I believe him without question.
Yeah, and Jay, as we move on to this, you've told me this. There's a lot more that's going to be rumored, speculated, but on the surface, when you look at it without any actual context of anything other than this is what happened, you're like, what?
Yeah. I mean, look, as Anthony said, this was a no-brainer deal for the Lakers. And the focus of a lot of the takes on this trade, hot, cold, or otherwise, have been on the Mavericks end of it, and rightfully so, as Anthony illustrated, and spoiler alert, as you're going to illustrate when I'm done here. So I'm going to look at this from the Lakers angle, because while on the surface, it may seem to be a head-scratcher, how do two of the most heliocentric players in the NBA share just one basketball? And I'll get into that. But the bigger picture is how this sets up the Lakers, not just for the immediate present, but for a post-LeBron future. And now that the trade is official, more information has come out. And one of those nuggets is that apparently Dončić is stoked about joining the Lakers, according to an NBA source. The early signs point to a probable long-term future with LeBron and company, and the company should be solid. The Lakers were, as Anthony noted, there were no king's ransom. The Lakers were able to keep 26-year-old Austin Reeves, who's an 18.5-point-a-game scorer, who could be Luka's post-LeBron running mate. Hell, the king, who has called Dončić his favorite player in the NBA, seems pretty confident the two of them will excel, and the transition will be seamless, saying, quote, "We can be whatever we want it to be. It won't take long. I can play with anybody. I think he can as well. So we'll work well together." Look, long term, when he's at full strength, the Lakers now have a top 5 player who should be able to remain at his current level for at least the better part of his prime years and shouldn't be the financial burden that he would have been in Dallas, as Anthony noted. Doncic is eligible for a 4-year extension worth nearly $229 million this summer, according to ESPN's Bobby Marks. He also could opt out to sign a shorter 3-year, $165 million extension with a player option for 2028-29, which would allow his next contract to be up to 35% of the cap once he's reached 10 seasons of experience. On the court, Luka's game isn't based on his speed or athleticism, so his style of play could continue well into his mid-30s if he learns to take better care of his body. His weight and conditioning issues, as Anthony noted, have always been a concern for the Mavericks, whether they said so publicly or not, and were a factor in this trade. That is coming out now. But a side benefit of joining the Lakers is Luka will now have the best teacher in the NBA on how to take care of your body and continue to play at an all-star level deep into your career. No one is taking care of his body as well as any modern athlete in sports history than LeBron James. Yeah, defense is another knock on Luka's game, and it has often been optional for him. But the Lakers will no doubt endeavor to replace Davis's shot blocking and rim protection, acquiring Mark Williams from Charlotte for rookie Dalton Neck,
Connect, yes.
and their 2031 first-round pick, which they did not have to give Dallas, and a 2030 first-round pick swap is his start. And Luka's best defense has always been his offense, especially in the postseason, where he's arguably one of the best offensive players on the planet because of his ability to manipulate matchups in the half-court setting, which dominates the playoffs. As we've seen since they acquired Luka, the Lakers know that they'll need to make further roster changes, finding better fits around Dončić, James, and Reeves, while these 3 primary offensive options learn how to play with each other. James has been through this before, having had to figure out how to play alongside Kyrie in Cleveland and Dwayne Wade in Miami. Dončić has had to learn how to play alongside Irving in Dallas. What'll be interesting to watch, at least for me, once Luka returns from the calf injury that's kept him off the floor for over a month, is how we'll be watching how a pair of longtime Batmans who have spent their careers making everyone around them better, but also are 2 of the most ball-dominant players in the NBA, figure out who has to become more of a Robin. James has played off the ball on occasion, but every offense he's ever played in has had the ball go through him. Dončić is the same way. He'd occasionally play off the ball while sharing a backcourt with Kyrie, but he's the very definition of heliocentric superstar who has the ball in his hands orchestrating the offense. I think it'll be a little clunky at the start, but if when they can figure it out, I can see Dončić and James developing a 2-man game that the NBA that will scare the bejesus out of the rest of the NBA. How do you game plan for the havoc they could potentially wreak? Lakers now have 2 of the top 5 passers in the association. You can envision James screening for Dončić and hitting shooters out of the short roll or diving to the rim with a 4-on-3 advantage. With Dončić, you can envision him screening for James and popping out for open threes or operating in the same way as James on that aforementioned short roll. But as I said at the top, that as much as the Lakers do want to win now, getting an NBA superstar as big as Luka Dončić is about the future of the Lakers franchise. The key will be convincing Dončić to stay, but while it's still early days, he does seem to see a future in La La Land, despite the fact that he'll be an unrestricted free agent in 2026. And while the Lakers have a good history of keeping big names around, you never know what a player might want to do. There are still plenty of questions needing answers after this trade for the Lakers, for James, for Dončić, and even for the rest of the NBA, especially when one source directly involved in the deal put it thusly, quote, "This might be the most stunning trade in NBA history, but the one thing we can say with some sense of conviction is that the Lakers are better positioned for the post-LeBron era than anyone across the association could have anticipated, including, and maybe even especially, the Lakers themselves."
I think the one thing, so I think even now, considering I still think offensively LeBron might be one of the 20 or 30 best players in the NBA, considering just the hours before the trade, minutes before the trade, he dropped the triple-double in Madison Square Garden. So it's not just the future. This team, if LeBron James plays 2 to 3 more solid years of offense, which not out of the question,
Nope.
this team could contend for a title very, very quickly. What bothers me about this trade, and yes, what Dallas is doing is a huge just overreaction in terms of this is just basketball. It's not life and death. Do not threaten another person's life. That I completely agree with. That being said, what Nico Harrison, the GM, has done to this Mavericks team is borderline, I hate to say criminal, but it's criminal. Because when you have one of the 5 best players in the NBA, one of the 3 best players in the NBA, and you want to get rid of him, you shop him around.
Yeah.
And yes, if you want to get rid of him and there's no irreconcilable differences, perfectly fine. I don't agree with it, but it's perfectly fine. It is your duty to get the most for that player possible.
Yeah.
And the most for that player is not what you got in this trade. And this is not an insult to AD. I think AD is a very fine piece. He can still be a top guy on almost any team out there. Just not for a championship team, apparently in that situation. But what you talk to one person, you talk to one GM, which Nico admitted to after the presser. Well, and I think that's 100% true. Or else this trade doesn't get made. And Mitch Kupchak, there is a combo between those two because they have all the links with Kobe Bryant back in the day. And so guess what? They do one trade, and then basically, Rob Pelinka, the GM of the Lakers, negotiates Nico Harrison down to what they gave him. I don't understand what's going on. There might be other stuff that's going on. It's whatever. But if the smart person in the skeptic in people would be like, something had to happen for this to happen. But the person who's been watching bad GMs in the NBA for years and decades might be thinking, yeah, Billy King, makes sense. Move on. So I honestly think what we've just seen here is the worst of the NBA in terms of just, we're back to why the players want so much power. Because stuff like this happens. Luka Dončić is very stoked to play in Los Angeles. No doubt about it. But he was still flabbergasted, floored, shocked that he got moved out of Dallas just like we were. And as we move on to football in just a few seconds, I think just this story is just taking the whole world of sports. Even took a decent amount of attention away from the Super Bowl itself this week just because of it. And I'm just floored at everything. And as much as Nico Harrison is made some good moves in the past, and he is a decent man. I don't know him, but what he did was a disservice and a dereliction of duty to the Dallas Mavericks, which just makes me think: is it his call, or is it the call of the Adelsons, who now own the team up top? Because you can't make a move like this unless the owner knows about it.
Yeah, well, without a doubt, Rob. And here's the thing: the takeaway that kind of purely from the business end of it, that kind of made me go, There was one executive who commented after it all went down. He's like, "You got 2 GMs doing this old school, not even just putting it out themselves, not even involving players' agents, which is unheard of in this day and age in the NBA." Hello, Joe.
And let's move on, guys, and let's stop to talk about basketball, because I don't think Joe really cares to talk about basketball, which is perfectly fine. It's 2 days before the Super Bowl.
Except for St. John's.
Yes, except we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm a UConn fan, Joe, so we're holding off.
I know my buddy.
We're holding off all of that discussion, but whatever. Anyway, welcome, Mr. Joe Tufaro. He is my cohort on the Official Review podcast, which we've done every Monday throughout the season. We have one more left to go this year, and he's been on our show many a time. He will be talking about the Super Bowl with us. Good evening, Joe.
How are you?
Good to see you, my friend.
Hey.
All right.
Excited about the game on Sunday?
All right. All right, let's talk about the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 59. The two teams in the Super Bowl, a matchup between the AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs and the NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles. And with a dominant quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, a very good defense of the Chiefs, and against the dominant defense and almost MVP Jalen. Oh, wait a minute. This is my script from 2 years ago when they met in Super Bowl 57. Oh, I'm just going to pull it up here. You can see the similarities. All right. Got it now. Some things have changed between the now 17-2 Chiefs and 17-3 Eagles. So we're going to get to the Kansas City Chiefs. Jay and Anthony, you'll start us off on that. Let's talk about the Chiefs. The only team ever to make it to a Super Bowl with a chance to do the impossible in the Super Bowl era. Repeat, copyright Pat Riley, although he agreed to let the Kansas City Chiefs use it if they win this Sunday. So thank you for the job, Mr. Riley. No, you've had a bad week. We'll start with the Chiefs offense, which has been up and kind of down in the regular season, kind of meh in the divisional round, and saving their best for almost last in the AFC Championship. So, Jay, what is the key to victory for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense on Sunday?
I mean, it's an often used plot device, if you will, but it's all about playoff Pat creating Mahomes magic. Yeah, I mean, we've all been witness to it, especially in the postseason. And while he's gone from being Bob Gibson, dominating the game from beginning to end, carving up defenses along the way and lighting up the scoreboard, to being more like Mariano Rivera, cutting out the heart of the opponent with a game-winning drive to close out the win, his ability to run the Chiefs offense and make plays, now with his legs as well as with his arm, when the game is on the line, has reached such epic levels that the case could be made that if he wins on Sunday, he'll replace Tom Brady as the GOAT, at least in the postseason. Now, I've talked about it before. Overall, this is a down year for Mahomes when compared to the highlight reel video game numbers seasons he's had in the past. Did complete a career high 67% of his passes. Only 3,928 yards, only 6.8 yards per attempt, only 245 point yards per game, only 26 touchdowns against 11 picks. All were career lows. His 93.5 passer rating, second lowest of his career. 67.7 QBR, and the 36 sacks he took were the most of his career in a single season. He had a solid season running with the ball, though. 307 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, a pair of touchdowns. But after the Chiefs' Week 11 loss to Buffalo, he closed out the regular season with the type of numbers that reminded us of who we expect him to be. Completing a little under 65% of his passes. He averaged 250 yards, 4 yards passing per game, 7.4 per attempt, 11 touchdowns against 0 interceptions, and a passer rating of 98.1 over the last 6. And we all know what he becomes once the playoffs begin. For his career, his QBR is about 10 points higher in the postseason than the regular season. Numbers in divisional ground over Houston were, okay. 16-25, 64%, only 177 yards, barely over 7 an attempt, just 1 touchdown, no picks, 98.2 passer rating. But in the showdown with the newly crowned NFL MVP Josh Allen in the AFC title game, playoff Pat made some Mahomes magic, 18-25, a little over 69%. 245 yards, 9.4 an attempt, 1 score, no picks through the air, 111.9 passer rating, 11 carries, 43 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Now, to prevent Mahomes from beating them over the top with chunk plays in the passing game, defensive coordinators like the Eagles' Vic Fangio started playing those too high safety looks, forcing Mahomes to beat them by methodically moving the ball down the field. They figured that eventually Mahomes would get frustrated, force a throw that would lead to a turnover that would lead to a Chiefs loss. But Mahomes has shown that he's figured out how to beat that strategy, taking what the defense gives him, especially in the underneath areas, and scrambling when needs be. And if you look at some next-gen stats from this season, which, as I said, was a down year, there is evidence to back this up. He ranked first with a third down quarterback rating of 90 in the regular season, and that jumped up to 98 in the playoffs. The top level is 100. That's as high as QBR goes. And while he only throws to the sticks 28% of the time on early downs, that's the second lowest, that number jumps to 60%, 11th highest on third down, showing that Mahomes knows how to change his risk profile when the situation requires it. Now, when Mahomes has to scramble, he's been ridiculously efficient. 0.79 EPA per play, third highest overall, and the highest among quarterbacks with at least a 2% scramble rate. He's converted 22 first downs as a runner on scramble attempts in the regular season, 5 more in the playoffs. Over the past 2 seasons, the Chiefs, with Mahomes at quarterback, ranked 15th in EPA per play on first and second down, number 1 on third down. They're the second best team over that stretch at converting third and medium, 56%, and the best at third and long, 32%. When a team has a season or two like that, you can chalk it up as a fluke. But when that same team beats expectations on third downs almost every season for almost a decade with the same quarterback and a coach, it's their thing. And then there's this. According to NFL Next Gen Stats, the Chiefs ranked second in average separation at the time of ball arrival, 3.9. And while that sounds like a wide receiver metric, it might have more to do with Andy Reid's offensive scheme and the quarterback executing it. The reason behind it is that separation in this particular context is only measured on targets. And this is in part a reflection of Mahomes' ability to find and throw to an open receiver. Now, we talked on the last show about Mahomes and Reid and their ability to utilize the quick passing game, pass plays with the balls out of the quarterback's hands in 2.5 seconds or less. On quick throws this season, Mahomes, 60.9 success rate, tops in the NFL, passer rating of 101.9, fourth best. On the flip side, against quick throws, the Eagles defense allowed only 5.5 yards per attempt, number 1 in the NFL. They did allow a 93.7 passer rating, 7th, and a 49.3 success rate, just 15th. When these teams met in Super Bowl 57 2 years ago, Mahomes went 13 of 13 for 72 yards with 2 touchdowns and a 129.3 passer rating on such throws. How that matchup plays out, especially in the red zone when there's less underneath area available, could go a long way to deciding who takes home the Lombardi. The Eagles allowed 174.2 passing yards per game in the regular season, fewest in the NFL, and Fangio's defense also ranks number 1 in yards per play allowed, 4.7, total yards per game allowed, 278.4. His unit ranks second, points per game allowed, 17.8, third in opponent's passer rating, 82.5. Mahomes, however, has a habit of shredding good pass defense. He is 3-0 in his career in the playoffs against teams that have had the number 1 ranked pass defense in the regular season, including Super Bowl 54 versus the 49ers and Super Bowl 57 versus the Eagles. He's the only quarterback to face the regular season's best pass defense multiple times in the playoffs and beat them each time. He's also the only quarterback in the faced the regular season's best pass defense club to have 3 such wins. The other quarterbacks, Tom Brady, 2-1, Peyton Manning, 1-1, Steve Young, Len Dawson, also 1-1. Look, the Eagles are going to present Mahomes with a challenge, despite the fact that he seems to have had Vic Fangio's number, going 8-0 in his chess match with one of the best defensive minds of this generation. But Andy Reid's had 2 weeks to prepare and come up with some new looks out of some old things to take advantage of what Fangio does best and put playoff Pat in position to create some Mahomes magic. And we all know where Mahomes' magic has led the Chiefs over the last 2 years.
Man, Len Dawson really was just a charter member of that club for like 25 years now, wasn't he? That's a club that you just never would want to join, I think, with Len Dawson, Steve Young, Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning. Or maybe you do. I don't know if I want to party with those guys too much. You could say as goes on. All right. Defense wins championships. That's what they tell me. So, Anthony, the Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo were a top 10 defense in the regular season and are the calling card of this team in the playoffs, as seemingly it has been for this budding dynasty of late. Anthony, what is the key to victory on what we would all call the less sexy side of the ball, that being the defense on Sunday for the back-to-back and possibly back-to-back-to-back after Sunday reigning Super Bowl champions?
Yeah, how fun is this? He asked the running back to talk about defense after being hit by that very defense playing football for so long. But for the Chiefs, it starts and stops with stopping another running back, and that's Saquon Barkley. I mean, the Eagles led the NFL in rushing rate with 56% of their plays actually being runs, whether it's Saquon Barkley, whether it's Jalen Hurts, a touch push. Majority of the Eagles' offense has been powered by the running game. And with Saquon Barkley's ability, his vision, an elite offensive line, and his ability to turn an average 4 or 5 yard play, has the Commanders found out on the very first play of the game, 4 or 5 yards, and take it to the house almost immediately. Saquon is a challenge for any defense, and considering no defense really be able to solve him just yet, particularly in the playoffs. the Chiefs have a tall order. Now, do you stack the box? Good idea. And so what happens is Saquon breaks through that stack line, and all you have between Hader and Saquon and stopping him is a free safety. Do you leave two safeties back and leave it light in the box? Saquon can help you just as much as well. So what Steve Spagnuolo is going to have to do is he's going to have to really mix up his defenses. He's very good at disguising his blitzes. I think that's something that would really affect Jalen Hurts more than anything, as we saw in against Josh Allen, his ability to hide and disguise who's blitzing to the very last moment, even after the snap. But as far as stopping Saquon, you may have to change up. And what Steve Spagnuolo has done in the past is changed up his schemes according to the opponent. So you may see a more of five guys five linemen in the box, or even more of nickel to match the speed of Saquon if he gets outside towards the sideline. So those are things that you may see him do. As far as the secondary, the Chiefs don't have the greatest speed in the secondary, and you have two burners in Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, who you may have to guard 1-on-1. So that is the one thing that may be the disadvantage at the Kansas City Chiefs, is the fact that you got to cover these two guys 1-on-1. If you've seen AJ Brown and Smith burn guys repeatedly under those circumstances, so it comes down to really, and I've said this all season long, making Jalen Hurts beat you with his arm. And with Jalen Hurts has done a great job of not turning the ball over. But I said this even in the previous NFC Championship game when I talked about the Eagles' offense. Jalen Hurts has really done a lot of holding the football and taking some unnecessary hits, taking some unnecessary sacks, even sometimes scrambling a little prematurely without allowing routes to to develop. For a guy like Steve Spagnuolo, that is a dream come true when you think about how he disguises blitz and likes to play around. It really mixes up his coverage as well. So step one is definitely slowing down Saquon Barkley, even if it's to keep his yards per carry under control. If they can keep it under 4 yards, 4 yards or less, then that's a great sign for the Kansas City Chiefs. At least force the Eagles to play behind the sticks, behind instead of first, second, and third and short, make it be second and third and long, and put the pressure on Jalen Hurts to make those throws downfield, which he has struggled to do in so often on this season. The Chiefs are a little more aggressive in the secondary, so I can see Hurts kind of forcing a pass that's not there and creating some more turnovers. But more importantly, it's just making Jalen Hurts move around, feel uncomfortable, make his timing speed up a little bit. We saw in the division round him taking unnecessary safety when he had a receiver open to kind of dump the ball to. So I would see Steve Spagnuolo really disguising and changing it up an awful lot. I don't think you could do one sure thing against the Eagles because they're so good at really being able to get the ball to the breakout players. But also, here's another thing about the Chiefs, and we saw this. They are very stacked about and ready for the touch push, because we saw them really stuff Josh Allen numerous times, including on that 4th-and-1. Even I was screaming at the TV saying they're literally stacking the left side of the line. Do something else. But in this case, I can see the Chiefs really preparing for the touch push and being able to stop Jalen Hurts, which, by the way, hasn't been nearly as effective as in years past. So I really get the advantage to Spagnuolo and the Chiefs defense if they can limit Saquon's yards per carry on each carry and make Jalen Hurts be the guy to beat them.
Saquon going to be 28, by the way, on Sunday, celebrating his birthday at the Super Bowl. And he'll do it very likely by breaking the all-time full season rushing record. He is only 30 yards away from that. Something I wanted to kind of note that is kind of interesting is we're all talking about, and I don't think this will go into Joe's angle, but if it does, sorry, Joe, you know how much you love stats, so I can always just immediately jump over those. Is the fact that in the 2 games that Jalen Hurts has played, remember, they also played last season in 2023 on Monday Night Football. Jalen Hurts has run for 97 yards, ran for 70 yards in Super Bowl 57, and 5 touchdowns. So that tush push may still be effective, and Jalen Hurts is still not as good of a runner as Saquon Barkley as he doesn't need to be, but it'd be very interesting to see if more mobile Jalen Hurts can do the job on Sunday. So Chiefs are ready to possibly make it a three-peat, but Joe and I are now going to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, our favorite. Third time in the Super Bowl in 8 years. I could go from a franchise that had no Lombardies in the trophy case before the start of 2018 to a nice matching Lombardi, the one with that kind of shine that Nick Foles led them to in Super Bowl 52. Yeah, and Philly special and everything else. For the Eagles, unlike 7 years ago and 2 years ago, as we mentioned before, their offensive star power doesn't start under center. It starts in back of the center with running back Saquon Barkley. Joe, we've talked about the Eagles all year, possibly more than we've ever wanted to because of the success that they've had. But let's pick your brain and talk about what the offensive key for the Eagles is on Sunday.
Yeah, so I mean, to go back to what Anthony said, obviously we all know where it starts. It has to go through, for them, it has to go through the running game. If Spagnuolo is smart enough, and we know he is, and he has enough tricks up his sleeve, which he does, that he can force Jalen Hurts to be the guy that beats you. Again, this is one of those easy things where you say things, something like that, make Jalen Hurts beat you. And he may do it, but that's the only way you can afford to lose this game is if he actually has a good week. I think we talked about it last week, Rabbi said, if he throws it his normal, what he's been doing lately, 16, 18 times, 20 times, they'll have a chance. They'll be doing a good job. He can run the ball. Saquon can run the ball. They can get some short passes out, get those slants to Brown, which he's very good at. But if he's throwing it 42 times a game, they lose. I think that's just a simple math equation for me is if Jalen Hurts has to throw the ball 40 times, then they're losing and they're trying to come back from something. And then that's where Steve Spagnuolo has a lot of fun. If you make yourself one-dimensional, oh boy, you better watch out because it's coming from everywhere, but you'll have no idea where it's coming from. And again, the only smart thing Tony Romo ever said in his life last year's Super Bowl was Spagnuolo can't lose a game on defense. He can't give up a winning drive or a winning score on defense when you have Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. So you're going to take every chance you get. Once that team reaches midfield, then you just keep coming. You blitz, you blitz, you blitz. Because if you give up a big play, Patrick Mahomes gets the ball back. And if you happen to just keep blitzing and you get a sack or you move them back, then you figure out a way to win the game that way. Again, Patrick has the ball in his hands at that point at the end of the game. That's his job. With an offense like that and a quarterback like that, you can't be the last team on the field. You have to force it and take your chances to see if you can turn the ball over. Or again, who cares if you give up 6 points? You got that guy on the other side of the guy sitting on the bench that can't be sitting on the bench at the end of a game if you're losing. So I think he knows his job. I think that again, we keep kind of switching back and forth on what it is, but I think the angles are pretty much what it is. They need to run the ball. They need to continue to run the ball, the Eagles. They need to just keep doing it different ways. And again, Hurts is a good runner, even not only just the 1 and 2 yard things. So he's going to have to figure that out, how to do some option runs and things of that nature. But I think that's the way that they figured out since early in this year, since they struggled the first few games. They looked awful the first few games, and they finally realized, hey, we better be a running team. Our offensive line is good enough. Let's see what we can do. And now their defensive line is good. So let's see if we can't play a low scoring game against this team and maybe force some mistakes.
Until I want to mention one thing to you, Joe, but I want to mention this before I say this. 100 until the Washington game, in 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
the numbers for Jalen Hurts, he didn't pass for in any of the wins, he didn't pass for more than 155 yards. And he hits that magic number of 250, they lose. It's not just, and you see the numbers, 24 attempts, 25 attempts. He had 28 in the Washington game, but circumstances led to him doing that to kind of stay on the gas. The one
But you
thing
also had a lot more possessions because of 5 or 6 turnovers, right? So you
and
have no
that's
at that point, you're like, what am I going to do, right?
And the
So
one thing I'm curious about, I've talked about this on the show with you, Joe, and I've talked about this over here. The number of possessions that the Eagles are going to want on Sunday. I feel like if there's a 10 or more possessions that the Chiefs get during the game, I think the game is toast right there. The Chiefs may go down the field quickly, but the Eagles really need to keep that time of possession, don't you think?
yeah, no, I do. And I think it's one of those things we always talk about, that the wasted possession. So this is where we get to coaching as a part of the game plan. Is we know Nick Foles is going to want to go for it on 4th down. He's going to want to do the whole thing. He's going to have the fake tush push. They have all kinds of things coming out of it, I'm sure, where they snap it between Hurts's legs to somebody behind him, and all kinds of crazy stuff that you have to do. But you miss one of those, you're giving up a possession, and you are not pinning the other team back. You are wasting your possession, getting nothing out of it, especially if you go for it on, you know, in the offensive zone on the 35, where you could easily kick a field goal, and you decide you're going to keep going for it on 4th down. You give up possessions. And we've seen it we saw it 3 years ago when the Giants beat Minnesota. We saw it a couple of years ago, last year in Detroit against San Francisco. You can't just throw away possessions in games like that. You have to take the points that they're given to you. Don't chase the 2-point play for any reason unless it's necessary. Not in the middle of the third quarter where all of a sudden you wind up at the end of the game having to make a 2-point play because you screwed up earlier. So all those things come down to coaching, and we all know, I think everybody on this panel agrees who the better coach is.
Oh, yeah.
In this group, or maybe even better assistant coaches. But again, Fangio has turned this defense into something really good, and I don't want to step on your stuff. So
Yeah, that's
that side is kind of even almost to that point where they're pretty bright. You trust both of them, but we all know who could have the possibility of screwing something up for their team from the sideline.
Rabbi, your comment about the number of possessions, and Joe's yours about not giving away possessions kind of reminds me of, Rabbi, this will resonate with you. The one thing you used to hear all the time during the season in 1998 when the Yankees were marching to their 114 win World Series season is every time you made an error to give them an extra at bat, they consistently made you pay.
The major pay, right?
And and I equate that to, I compare that to like of all of the quarterbacks in the NFL that you can least afford to give an extra possession to, Patrick Mahomes is that guy.
Yep. Yep.
agreed. So for the Eagles defense, it is a hard challenge to take down a multiple time Super Bowl QB and regular season MVP at quarterback. But Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford, and Jaden Daniels have fallen down hard. Let's talk about the defense of the Birds and their key on Sunday. Okay. I don't like to talk about the opponent when I'm talking about another team, but I'm going to go through it at a different angle. And it's not been a great strength of his this year, but the biggest issue for me, and I've seen it for mostly in the postseason now, is the mobility of Patrick Mahomes. When you win all of these Super Bowls and you win all of these playoff games, there becomes a common trend. And let's quickly talk about how the Eagles have done against two quarterbacks in particular, the two most mobile quarterbacks that they played. They played Lamar Jackson right in the beginning of December, right after Thanksgiving. He had 8 carries for 79 yards. In the 3 games that they played this year against Jaden Daniels, they actually did a pretty good job. 147 yards, 1 TD. The only game that they really did anything in was the Week 16 victory. Patrick Mahomes this season has only gone for 2 tutties and 307 yards. Longest run 33. Now, again, talked about the 2 meetings that the 2 teams have had over the last pretty much 730 days. 38 yards, 6 carries to Patrick Mahomes a year ago, 44 yards, 6 carries in Super Bowl 57. But what you see from Patrick Mahomes, and I want to get to what he's done lately in a second, but I want to get back to the past first with Patrick Mahomes. What you've seen in Patrick Mahomes in the last 2 years, starting with that Eagles Super Bowl, is the legs of Patrick Mahomes has been a huge key at various times. So I looked at the play-by-play of 3 specific games, and I wanted to kind of just show the effect of it. Now, it could be the effect of everything, but I've always said, and I've said this to Joe many times, the most guaranteed play in sports is not the tush push anymore. It's Patrick Mahomes going around the end on a 4th and 1 because everybody is afraid of all of the weapons that the Chiefs have, even though the only one that's been consistently used over the years is Travis Kelce for a first half. For God's sake, Juju Smith-Schuster is back on this team again for the second time in 3 years, and he was on the freaking Patriots last year in the middle of it. So it's just like you see the teams are pretty much the same, the players are the same. So going back to Super Bowl 57, second quarter, 14-yard run, 2nd and 3, led to a first and goal and a TD. And then, of course, probably the biggest play of Super Bowl 57 on that final drive, a 26-yard fourth quarter run to set up the game-winning field goal. On a bum leg, by the way. He had issues about his mobility going into the game. Now, whether that was a lie or not for the Chiefs doctors, I don't know. I don't care. So I'm just saying he had so much mobility in that game. Then I looked at Super Bowl 58. He had a 4-yard run on 3rd and 4. Did that led to a field goal. Most importantly, though, the overtime possession. He converted a 4th and 1 by doing the same end-around play to the right. And then a 13-yard run on 3rd and 1 in what ended up being pretty much like one of the last few plays of the game, because after that, it was pretty much game, set, match. You know the ending of the script. Then you look at the AFC Championship game against Buffalo just a few weeks ago. 4th and 1 conversion, second quarter, 10-yard touchdown to the right, fourth quarter. In that game, by the way, 43 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Now, Mahomes didn't do a lot this season. Only rushed 3.6 yards times per game. But in the postseason, they've let him go a little bit. He had 7 attempts against the Texans, 11 against the Chiefs. And now you see that you can do a lot more with Mahomes. This is a healthy Mahomes. I know he's tired Mahomes, but this is a healthier Mahomes than we've seen in a while. So while we all rave about the arm of everything, Tom Brady didn't do this in his playoff runs, but Patrick Mahomes on the ground might be a little thing that you need to pay attention to on Sunday, because he might do more significant damage there than he does in the air.
Yeah, and Rabbi, I think the fact that he is healthy and can utilize his legs has helped Andy Reid kind of expand the playbook a little bit. You didn't see a whole lot of design runs for Mahomes by Reid during the regular season, but you've definitely seen them go into that part of the playbook in the playoffs, and it's been key to the victories.
All right. Gentlemen, when it comes to predictions, they not like us, they not like us, they not like us. But we're about to find out in which way that is the case, whether really good or really bad. Starting with Joe, I know you love predictions, but I would like a winner, a score, an MVP that I am surely to regret in 48 hours' time. I don't know about you, the other 3 of you.
What was my prediction earlier in the year? Does anybody remember our predictions?
Rabbi, did you make note?
I had the Chiefs. I did not, but I had the Chiefs going into the Super Bowl. I think it was the Packers, so I just couldn't go against the Chiefs anymore. It's futile to go against them, but for this Super Bowl, we'll see what we think.
I had Detroit and Buffalo. So
you were close.
There goes mine. Yeah, I had the championship game, guys, at least, so that helps. I'll say the Chiefs win their third, annoyingly. Travis Kelce retires at halftime instead of because she says yes, and she says, but you can't play football anymore. So he pulls a Giselle and he retires at halftime to join his brother on a TV show. So I think Chiefs, and I'll say the over under is, I'll just give you a total. I'll give you 47.5.
Okay.
And that's good enough. I'm not giving you a score.
MVP?
Oh, well, who's ever playing quarterback at the time for the team, because that's how it goes. We all know that. So that's not even a discussion. Or no, unless Saquon Barkley runs for 350 yards and the Eagles actually win, then I would say I think that's the better bet is does a non-quarterback win the MVP? That might be a better question than who it's
Rabbi,
going to be. We all know it's always going to be.
you got the prop bet numbers on that one somewhere?
I could look it up, but Anthony, go ahead with your prediction.
Wow. I've been going back and forth with this, but I'm gonna go 31-27 Chiefs complete the three-peat. Patrick Mahomes leads a game-winning drive in the fourth quarter and notches his fourth Super Bowl MVP.
I'll keep a lookout for that, but Jay, I feel like I know which way you're going, but go ahead.
I mean, and I got some, we've talked about, the history that's at stake here, and I got some numbers for y'all. But, for the basics, I'm gonna make it so far unanimous. I think the Chiefs will three-peat. I'm gonna go 31-28 with the score. And again, Anthony, I agree with you. I think Mahomes is gonna lead a drive at the end of the game to do that. And I think he'll be the MVP. Now, I told you guys that I want to see history made on Sunday, and the Chiefs are halfway there. Ninth team to win back-to-back Super Bowls, but the first ever back-to-back winner to make it back to the Super Bowl the following season. They're the fourth team to appear in 3 straight Super Bowls, joining the 1971-73 Dolphins, the 1990-93 Buffalo Bills, and the 2016-2018 New England Patriots. They're also the first team to play in the Super Bowl 5 times in a 6-year span, and if they win, they'd be, as we all said, they'd be the first to win 3 straight Lombardis. As far as Mahomes goes, and this to me is a really interesting question. I kind of alluded to it in the previous segment. If he leads the Chiefs to victory and wins the Super Bowl MVP in the process, how can you not say he's at least the greatest postseason quarterback of all time? If he beats the Eagles on Sunday, he'll have won 10 straight playoff games, which would tie Brady's record set from 01 to 05. The tiebreaker would be that while Brady's Patriots missed the playoffs entirely in 02, Mahomes' Chiefs haven't lost since the 2021 AFC title game. You want some more evidence? Mahomes already has the second most wins in the playoffs when his team trails by double digits, 5, putting him only 1 behind Brady. But Mahomes is 5-2 when he's found himself down double digits. Brady finished his career with a record of 6-8. Before Mahomes, any greatest of all time quarterback argument could be won by Brady by simply asking this question. If you could pick any quarterback to win 1 playoff game, who would it be? And for the longest time, that answer was Tom Brady, full stop, drop mic, except any Super Bowl where he played Eli Manning. Not anymore. Now, if you ask anyone to pick 1 quarterback to win 1 big game to lead your team down the field in a must-win situation, it's Patrick Mahomes far and away, and it's not even close. He's the new king of clutch. The numbers speak for themselves. He has 4 straight playoff wins when trailing at the start of the fourth quarter, longest streak by a quarterback ever. And it started against the Eagles in Super Bowl 57. Oh, and last but not least, if the Chiefs three-peat on Sunday, Mahomes will tie Peyton Manning for the most wins against a Vic Fangio defense with 9. The tiebreaker will be that Mahomes will be undefeated at 9-0, while Peyton is 9-1. Now, I've rolled with the Chiefs since our kickoff show back in September, and I'm not changing horses with 1 race left, because if they win, they'll have made history as a team, and Patrick Mahomes will cement himself as the GOAT.
Okay. Before I get to my pick, gonna have to throw a red flag here. Mahomes
You're challenging something?
I'm challenging something. Mahomes has had one of the most amazing postseason careers already. But, and I hate to make this like a LeBron and Michael Jordan case, which is perfectly fine, but it's not. Hold on.
Do it, you're going to get Anthony's hackles up. Be careful how you do
that. You're not. But here's the thing. Not only does Brady have 7 Super Bowls, Super Bowl number 7 was against Patrick Mahomes. And an aging Tom Brady has 2 wins over Patrick Mahomes. 2 of the 3 that losses in his playoff career, and is the only quarterback to beat Patrick Mahomes ever in regulation in a playoff game.
Anthony, this kind of rings a Jordan apologist type of commentary, doesn't it?
There's no Jordan apologist type of commentary because, again, Brady has beaten Mahomes.
Yes, I know that.
So I think you have a very good case, but I do think Mahomes just has to do a little bit more even after Sunday. That being said, let's talk about the game. By the way, Travis Kelce 13-1, Xavier Worthy 26-1, AJ Brown 31-1, Chris Jones 61-1. By the way, if you want to.
Okay.
Okay. So I look at this game in most ways, and I look at this thing. I think the way that they've played this season, the Eagles are the better team, but it's not by much. They have a better offense in terms of getting down the field. The rushing attack is better, and honestly, I would take Kellen Moore over Matt Nagy in an offensive coordinator battle any day of the week. I think overall, the defense, probably the Eagles are just a little bit better. But here's the thing. It's not that much better, and I look at 3 specifics in terms of why I'm picking the Chiefs. Coach, Andy Reid against probably the worst coach to ever get to 2 Super Bowls of all time, Nick Sirianni, because he was freaking about to be fired in the beginning of the year. Quarterback, I'll take Mahomes over Hurts any day of the week, twice on Sunday. This is a much different version of Mahomes than it was. And intangibles. Specifically, as much as I hate him, I'll take Harrison Butker over Jake Elliott in any way, shape, or form at the end of the game.
Yep.
And because of the streak that the Chiefs are on in winning one-possession games, and it's historic, I believe they've won 18 one-possession games in a row now, 17 or 18. If I'm picking the Chiefs, if I'm picking the Eagles, I'm picking them by double digits. And I don't think that's going to happen. Chiefs 32, Eagles 29, but I actually think Travis Kelce will be the MVP of the game in what will probably be his last game, and he will not retire at halftime. I think Taylor Swift will allow him to play the rest of the game.
I think she's got a show to do somewhere in Brazil or something.
The Eras Tour is over, thank God, so we don't have to worry about that.
I'm sure there's another one coming pretty soon. So
there probably will be. She doesn't have enough money.
If he retires, they're going to need money. So
of course.
Yeah.
I think the moneymaker in the home is definitely. That's just
but how exciting Sunday is going to be? You got the Super Bowl, but we got something else that's big. Shout out to Sean Roman. We have the Puppy Bowl on Sunday as well. I'm so stoked. Okay.
Plus a big women's college basketball matchup, the top 4 matchup, South Carolina, Texas, go SEC.
Did you want to talk about St. John's now or later?
Oh, never.
No.
Oh, never. Never,
No,
never,
no.
ever later on, but not now.
We'll do it on Monday.
We can do it on Monday. We'll definitely do it on Monday. That is for sure.
Yeah.
Great win by them. We'll talk later.
And when
the coaches of this
Eli Manning getting host. When do we get
that's coming up after
you.
that's coming up after this next segment. But either way, the coach
I have proof.
Okay, yes, I have proof too. But you get to make fun of Dallas in this segment before we get into that. So it's pretty good.
I got it.
All right. The coaches of the Super Bowl teams have had a very good amount of success with their teams. Even though he just bashed them like crazy, Nick Sirianni is in his 4th season and is now in his 2nd Super Bowl and has a 700 overall winning percentage. Andy Reid is in his 12th season and his 5th Super Bowl, a little bit better, looking for his 4th Lombardi with KC as an overall 730 win percentage. I think these newly hired coaches this offseason want to have just a little fraction of the success with their first team or their latest team. Anthony, this is definitely a case of their latest team since I believe Pete Carroll is becoming the oldest person in the league. We'll begin the coaching carousel with the guy who hoisted the Lombardi 11 years ago, and that's Pete Carroll.
Yeah, he will be the oldest head coach in the National Football League starting next season. He takes over a Las Vegas Raiders team that was 9-17 under Antonio Pills over 26 games. And since they moved to Vegas in 2020, it's 36-48, which is 1 playoff appearance. And obviously, that was a wild card loss to Cincinnati in 2021. Pete Carroll, here's the thing. Pete Carroll is known for cultural changes, and this is a rated team that definitely needs one. I mean, you think about the constant coaching changes the last couple of years. There were 3 in the last 4, if you include John Gruden as well. But this is when you think about Pete Carroll's coaching career, he went with the 1 season with the Jets, The Jets win-loss record improved by 4 games. He goes to New England, takes over a team after Bill Parcells left, and kept the Patriots in playoff contention. They made the playoffs 2 of those 3 seasons that he was there. But and with the USC turned them into a national powerhouse. And of course, Seattle, where he had the Legion of Boom and had the great defense, and obviously Russell Wilson later on, led them to the Super Bowl. Yeah, 11 years ago, at MetLife Stadium, no less. But what Pete Carroll does is he brings a reputation for winning. He brings a reputation for changing the dynamics of the locker room, which is a good selling point for free agents. You look at what he's taking on. He's gonna have Max Crosby. He's gonna have Brock Bowles to play around with. The Raiders will have some kind of draft capital, but keep in mind also, this is really Tom Brady's first major hire as part of the Raiders ownership group. So that is another thing to take notice of. But for the Raiders, it's all about trying to build a winning culture from the ground up. When you look at this organization and how they have struggled, going back to the last few years in Oakland, and Pete Carroll, he's been wanting back in. Really since he left the Seahawks organization, and he's gonna have a tall order, but he's gonna have an ownership group that's gonna give him what he wants, and it's gonna be interesting to see what the Raiders turn into in the next year or so.
What's very interesting, though, is the hiring of their offensive coordinator and getting Chip Kelly. You're going to be I bet you're very happy about that, Jay, away from Ohio State. But that's something very interesting, because having Kelly go from where he was at UCLA, because he was in the college game for a little longer than you would think, because his days at UCLA, then going over and then being the mastermind behind Ohio State's playoff run in their 2024 season. It'll be a little bit different, I think. And one of the funny things is it'll be a little bit different having more of a fast-paced offense, even though I don't know who the quarterback is going to be on that team. That's going to be the real question. But one of the funny things is Tom Brady is like, and that's the Raiders ownership that I'm talking about here. Like, under the radar is like, I'm just making a couple of moves here and there. And then all of a sudden, Chip Kelly in this press conference says, yeah, Tom Brady was the one who gave me the recommendation, and then immediately wanted to that kind of propped me up and decided to make me go here. So you want to know who's really getting into Mark Davis's ear? I think you know the answer to that question. Sometimes a movie has an unexpected ending, but Jay, for the Patriots and Mike Vrabel, I think we all knew where this ending was going to end, and now the most expected reunion in the history of the world is now official.
Yeah, I mean, a former Pro Bowl linebacker with ties to the glory days of the Brady Belichick Patriots, who was elected into their Ring of Honor in 2023 and comes with a solid track record as a head coach. Yeah, hiring Mike Vrabel was a no-brainer for Robert Kraft and the Patriots. In 6 seasons as head coach of the Tennessee Titans, Vrabel had a 54-45 regular season record, went 2-3 in 3 trips to the postseason, 9-7 in each of his first 2 seasons in 2018 and 2019. Missed the playoffs in 2018, but led the Titans to the AFC Championship game in 2019. Followed that with an 11-5 record in 2020, 12-4 record in 2021, which resulted in the Titans getting the AFC #1 seed heading into the playoffs, and Vrabel winning the AP Coach of the Year award. 2019, easily Vrabel's most successful season in Tennessee. During that the playoff run to the AFC title game, Titans went into Gillette Stadium and beat the Patriots 20-13 in the wildcard round, which was ultimately Tom Brady's last game with New England. Vrabel's Titans squads were never made the Super Bowl, but they were known across the NFL for being a determined squad that often played above their talent level, with Exhibit A being how Vrabel helped quarterback Ryan Tannehill revive his career in Tennessee after 6 seasons in Miami, where he was, to use one of the rabbi's favorite terms, serviceable. In his first 3 seasons as Titans signal caller, Tannehill completed 67.3% of his passes, averaged 228 passing yards per game, 7.9 yards per attempt, 25 touchdowns versus 9 interceptions per season. The team went 40-30 in his 43 career starts. It's a 698 winning percentage. Now, Vrabel's ability to get his players like Tannehill to overachieve is why there's an expectation for him to develop Drake May along those same lines. It's one of the reasons Kraft hired him and one of the reasons Vrabel wanted the job. Now, the Patriots owner freely admitted that he put Gerard Mayo in, quote, an untenable situation, but he's confident that Vrabel will be able to turn the franchise around with his previous experience as a head coach and a player during the Brady Belichick era. Kraft also said, quote, in the interview process, Mike showed us that he had a very deep understanding of our current team, and most importantly, he had a clear and focused strategy for how to get us back to a championship way that is so important to all of us, but also something that I think our fan base really deserves and expects. Now, Vrabel's first move in filling out his coaching staff was a callback to that fabled Patriots era of yours. He brought back Josh McDaniels, who served as offensive coordinator under Belichick from 06 to 08, and then again from 2012 to 2021 for his third tour of duty running the Patriots offense. Now, this is a big swing by Vrabel and could be the thing that defines his tenure as the guy who followed Belichick. But I can't say I'm surprised by the move. McDaniels has a great track record in New England. In his second season as offensive coordinator in 07, he oversaw a record-setting offense for a Patriots team that went undefeated in the regular season before losing to Eli Manning's Giants in an epic Super Bowl. In his return to New England in 2012, after two mediocre seasons as the Broncos head coach, he picked up right where he left off, as if no time had passed, and directed an offense that finished top 5 in points scored in each of the next 7 seasons and won 3 Super Bowls. McDaniel's number one task will be developing Drake May, who completed 66.6% of his passes for 2,276 yards, 15 TDs, and 10 interceptions, and an 88.1 passer rating, with basically no one to throw to in his rookie season, developing him into the Patriots' next franchise quarterback. McDaniels has a pretty good track record in that area, as he coached Mac Jones to his best year in the NFL back when the former Crimson Tide quarterback was a rookie in 2021 with the Pats. Jones completed 67.6% of his passes, 3,801 yards, 7.3 per attempt, 22 touchdowns against 13 picks, and a 92.5 passer rating, and finished second in the voting for Offensive Rookie of the Year. His performance dropped off dramatically after McDaniels left to take the Raiders' head coaching job. The offensive scheme McDaniels ran in his previous stints with New England differs a bit from the one Vrabel's teams ran in Tennessee with Arthur Smith as offensive coordinator. Titans ran more of a gap scheme than a wide zone scheme in the run game. They ran a lot more play action than direct drop back in the pass game, especially after Tannehill came on board. It'll be interesting to see how Vrabel and McDaniels meld their schemes and philosophies, especially since the other members of the offensive staff have more ties to Vrabel than McDaniels. And the biggest knock on Vrabel's offense in Tennessee was that they never put up big passing game numbers. During their 11-5 season in 2020, they ranked 23rd in passing yards. The following season, when they went 12-4, they ranked 25th in passing yards. But on the flip side, they had a very efficient passing game. In those 2 seasons, they ranked number 3 and number 6 in passing success rate. And Vrabel spoke to the concerns that he always had a run-heavy offense. Obviously, when you have Derrick Henry, that's the way people are going to see you, which to some folks doesn't seem ideal for a promising young quarterback. But Vrabel said, quote, we have to be a very efficient passing football team. When you look at statistically what wins in the National Football League, our ability to affect the other team's quarterback and our ability to provide for an efficient quarterback and passing game is a high contributor to success. As to how that would equate to developing May, Vrabel said that he intends to, quote, put great people around him. I would say that my involvement will be as it relates to game management and situational awareness, and I'm trying to develop him as a leader of offense. Drake is going to be his own person, but I'm going to give him the things that I think are necessary to help him win games. As Giants co-owner John Mara said recently, quote, once you solve the quarterback issue, a lot of other things improve as well. The Patriots came out of 2024 feeling like they had solved the quarterback issue, but in an NFL that's about both the head coach and the quarterback, nothing really matters until you have the right people in both positions. Robert Kraft thinks he does now. Only time will tell, but I'm going to go on a limb and say that Mike Vrabel and Drake May will get more than just 1 season to try and get this right.
We'll get 2 seasons. I think the one thing that's interesting enough about this whole situation, and I don't know what was promised to Mayo in the transition from Belichick to Mayo, is the fact that Vrabel would have been perfect to start last season with, instead of basically taking a year, I wouldn't say off, he was he was doing some help with the Cleveland
Consulting
Browns
work
at
for
Ohio
Cleveland.
State at the same time. So it's interesting. By the way, not important, but I looked at the coaching staff too. Doug Marrone. There's
Yep.
actually 3 former coaches. Doug Marrone on the offensive line, Thomas Brown, who was the passing game coordinator.
Marrone was not hired as O-line coach. His role is currently undefined. The O-line.
Okay, I have him as offensive line here
Yeah,
in
no, I mean
this article, unless it
that was
moved
the
up.
initial thought that's why you hire that why he got hired. He is considered one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. But Vrabel bought his former O-line coach with him, so it'll be interesting to see what.
Okay, it's listed as assistant offensive line here, so I'm not 100% sure. So they might be around. But Thomas Brown is who was the interim head coach for the Bears last year, and one of our favorite friends, Joe, you would like, Ben McAdoo, has actually moved over to the defensive side of the ball and as a senior defensive assistant. So
sometimes you got to figure out what you can do, right?
I mean, Matt Patricia was an offensive coordinator for the Patriots, so everybody moves apparently to both.
That's a very loose definition of the phrase when it comes to him.
I mean, it happened by name only.
Rabbi, the interesting thing about Thomas Brown, this will be the first time that the Patriots have ever had a passing game coordinator. That title never existed under Belichick.
I don't think they needed a passing game coordinator under Belichick because they had Tom Brady.
His name was Tom Brady.
Fair enough.
It's like if you have a superstar coordinator, you don't have to worry about that. Joe, you get the Cowboys, and sweet Lord, their first time head coach.
Yeah, so they decided, hey, maybe we won't fire Mike McCarthy. Hey, let's wait and see what happens. Oh, he wants a lot of money. Oh, he thinks he wants some stuff. Well, let's fire him. Who's left out there? Oh, nobody. Oh, okay. Let's bring in Brian Schottenheimer. I remember his name from the Jets. He was really good. Except, oh no, he got booed out of the stadium. You guys all wanted to get rid of him for some reason, even though he made Mark Sanchez look good. So, but anyway, they wind up with nothing, as usual. So I think this goes back to, I think you take this all the way back to the Parcells era with the Cowboys, and they're kind of got stuck, and the Giants have gotten caught in this also, is you have some superstar young coaches on your staff, but you decide you got to keep the head guy for a while, and those guys leave. So Sean Payton leaves when Parcells is there, becomes a fantastic head coach. Then you have Kellen Moore, who's there when McCarthy's there. He gets fired. He's got to go. So you don't really have, or he gets transferred at whatever you happen to. You kind of get to this point, like Jason Garrett had a few guys, but it's like you hold on to your head coach for a little while longer, and you let him decide who's the problem, which is usually not what's the problem is, because it's usually the head coach. And then all of a sudden you have nobody to promote from within, and nobody really wants to come do your job because guess what? They don't want to be told what to do every day by the ownership and by the owner's kid. Dion was on this morning on Dan Patrick. It was hysterical. And they said, did you ever get to a point where Jerry called you? And he said, oh yeah, he called me. He said, and we talked for a while. And he said, I started to think of crazy things, like I could probably still live in my house and just get a helicopter every morning to practice. And
so good.
Jerry would do any, and he said, I'll just land next to Jerry's helicopter and we'll both jump out to practice and do everything. So he's having some fun with it, and he said, I said no. He goes, I never got to the point where I had to say no. I just said, would I ever want to be in the NFL and have to coach against my kids? And he said, I think that would put me in a weird spot, that I would have to go to a defensive guy and say, hey, this is what Shador doesn't like, or this is how we can beat these guys, or this is how we do. I thought it was pretty interesting for him to say that. He also made a fantastic joke because Dan Patrick said, I know guys are listed in your phone under different names, right? You don't have Jerry Jones listed as it, right? You're going to have some sort of name because it's going to be kept private. And he said, so what's Jerry in your phone? And Dion, without skipping a beat, says, direct deposit.
That's great.
He said, when it rains, it says direct deposit.
Wow.
But anyway, going back to Schottenheimer, again, they've really struggled since Parcells left, although Parcells didn't win a playoff game either in their thing. So they've won 7 NFC East titles in 19 years and have only won 3 playoff games in that time. So they're just not really very 4 playoff games, sorry. So they're just not very good at what they do. They kind of always land on the wrong guy, but you know what they're doing. They're landing on the guy that will take direction from the family. And we all know Jerry's intimate in the draft. He's picking who he wants. He's doing trades. He's doing whatever he has to do for this team. And you kind of got to give him credit that he takes that kind of ownership to it. But you wind up with a second-rate coach. And since Jerry can't be standing on the sidelines telling McCarthy, no, you got to call a timeout, or don't call a timeout, or don't take a knee there, or whatever. Like, try to run the play. Since he's not there, the coaches always wind up failing because they're just not very good coaches, and he doesn't allow them to be real head coaches. And I think McCarthy was happy to get out of there. I think everybody thought he was going to try to get to Chicago. But after that one down, he was smart enough to say, hey, I'll just take the year off and I'll wait for some other job to come up next year that I think is a little bit better, a little bit more. We all know where there's some questionable guys there that may not last a couple of years. So, picking Schottenheimer just is kind of like they threw a dart at a board and just came up with him, and I don't think it's going to be any good. I already heard some Cowboys guys on
A
TV.
bunch have already said it.
This
It's
is a
not
throwaway
great.
year. We're going to try to get, Archie Manning in 2 years, and like as if you could control where your draft pick is and who's coming out of college.
Yeah.
But they all said this is like a 2-3 win season because we have nothing. And if you don't trade Dak and you don't try to figure out a way to get salary cap relief, you're going to be in a real trouble for a couple of years. So I actually do feel bad for the guys like Zach Martin and all that stuff that they're just going to throw away the last 2 years of their career, and it's too bad. So
2-3 win season for the Cowboys. That sounds really good for
sounds
Giant
good to
fans.
me.
But
I'd like both of them I'd like them to just lose both games to us. Then I'd be happy. I don't care what.
I would just like one game at this point. The way
Well, as long as none of those 2 or 3 wins are against us, let's put it that way.
It's interesting when you look at Schottenheimer's career. I mean, you go from he's had 24 years since he was the Washington Redskins quarterbacks coach. You look at the resume: San Diego Chargers quarterbacks coach, St. Louis Rams offensive coordinator. There's 3 teams on this resume that technically don't exist in their current form. So good for him getting his first head coaching job at 51, but he's got a lot to prove, and we'll see what talent he has around him. He's solid, but I don't think he's a head coach. He's really head coaching material.
No, and he comes from a solid background. Obviously, his father was a genius and a legend, and he had his issues too, and he just hasn't figured it out yet. Maybe he'll be good, but again, it's a hard job to take your first time around, because if you're doubting yourself at all, and the guy who hired you is going to walk in, sit in your office every single day, every single morning, it's going to be a little tough to be yourself and to run the team the way you want to run it.
All right.
Cowboys are just another situation where you wish you could fire the owner.
Exactly.
although to be fair, they've gained. You don't know how good it is for Jerry Jones, especially considering all the other options that have been happening in Dallas the last few weeks with the Mavs.
Oh boy.
All right. Before we go from my angle, I'd just like to say, Anthony, in the creepiest voice possible, Duval. Yeah, that's right. It was a terrible opening press conference for Liam Cohen, the new head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I like the move. In his first, I like the move, but we'll get to everything else afterwards. In his first and only season in Tampa, yes, they've lost 2 offensive coordinators in the last 2 years. Dave Canellis is now in Carolina. He was brought in, and Cohen, who worked under Sean McVay, and he worked with Baker Mayfield in L.A. Very quickly when he was their offensive coordinator. Mayfield had a career season, 41 touchdown passes. That's 13 higher than he had in 2023, third most in franchise history. And he did it without Chris Godwin for half of the season and Mike Evans for a quarter of the season. So he did a good job scheming, adjusting. He developed Bucky Irving as a rushing attack. They had 28.6 points per game offensively, third most in team history, and only the 2020 and 2021 Bucks, who had a guy named Brady at quarterback, did better. And then fourth most in the league this year on the ground, 149.2 yards. And even the days of Warwick Dunn and Doug Martin, they haven't done that ever in franchise history. Now, Anthony, I mentioned the fact that he actually has experience in the Atlantic 10 when Hofstra was a college football team as a quarterback. I remember him well. And he's done very well. He's had a very good track for himself. However, the way this all went down, and that's not even including the Duval that I just mentioned in the press conference, is not great. Now, the Bucks didn't want to lose another offensive coordinator for the second time in 2 years. Completely understandable. So apparently, when they negotiated for a contract extension, to kind of be like, you know how offensive coordinators usually will just be locked up so they don't have to get a head coaching job. He was given $4 to $5 million per year. That was a number that Cohen came back with in negotiations. And then they agreed on the number, the Bucks did. There was just one thing. Do not take the interview in Jacksonville. But technically, they could never have actually prevented him. That was a clause that would never be legally binding, but goes on word in that situation. And then on Tuesday night, Cohen gives the whole team text, gives his head coach, Todd Bowles, a text, Mayfield a text, and says, hey, I'm staying in Tampa. And then 12 hours later, Cohen said he was pulling himself from consideration. And then after all that happened, 5 hours after that announcement, the Jaguars fired their general manager, Trent Baalke. You don't do stuff like that a month after you fire the head coach. You usually do them either in succession, unless you're the Jets. The Jets fall into their own category. But you don't do that stuff when you do it in succession. You don't do it a month apart. And then after the firing, Shad Khan, father of Tony Khan, Anthony's favorite person in the whole wide world, comes in and then basically says it wasn't Baalke's presence that denied the interview, but it played a role on it. So Cohen wanted stability, and so because he wanted stability, he decided to go to Jacksonville. Didn't return any of Tampa Bay's calls, by the way, that whole entire time, and decided to go to Jacksonville and take their offer. Very shady, very untrustworthy, and for a guy who wants stability, I'm glad he got the great head coaching job. I think he's a very good offensive mind. It was very good what he did in Tampa Bay. That bugs me just a tiny little bit. But he has a good staff in front of him. Grant Udinski will be his offensive coordinator. He was assistant offensive coordinator for the Vikings. But Cohen's going to call plays for the team next year. But again, it's good to have a guy like that to kind of implement your offense. They also they stay with Anthony Campanelle, who worked a lot. He interviewed for the Giants defensive coordinator position last year. And now another Jersey guy, he's in there. He's been an assistant coach. He was with the Dolphins as linebackers coach, and then with the Packers last season. So the numbers are great. Everything is great with Liam Cohen in terms of what he's done resume-wise. But I feel worse about him a month and a half later after I texted Joe initially. I think Cohen might be a good head coach because of the little goings-on that have happened behind the scenes. And we all know Jacksonville is not the steadiest franchise in the world. In fact, probably one of the worst franchises right now in all four major sports, and just due to situation, where they're positioned, and really ownership. So this might be a marriage made in hell. We'll see what happens. All right, so we move on. And guys, last night, as the NFL put on their contractually obligated Timu Oscars, known as the NFL Honors, the main event for us, the four of us, was the announcement of the Hall of Fame class of 2025 for the NFL. And history was made, as we will now see siblings in the Hall of Fame for the very first time. Unfortunately, those siblings are the Sharps, as the Legends Committee voted in Sterling to join his brother Shannon. Yes, Legends Committee, Shannon Sharp. I really, really feel being old. And while, by the way, shout out Club Shay Shay. And while Antonio Gates and the Allens, Eric and Jared, I don't need a DNA test to prove that they're not related. I think they're not. Anyway, they're all in. But unfortunately, it's first time Eli Manning, the first time nominee Eli Manning, who is out. The man who led the Giants to Super Bowl 42 and 46 wins will have to wait at least one more year and possibly more to make the Hall. Joe, you wanted to go first on this situation. You have everything together. I think you think this is a mistake to leave him out. I think we all think it was a mistake to leave him out here as fans, but numbers-wise, might be also a mistake.
I'm not sure why anybody talks about. I get that he was 171, whatever, as for his career wins and losses, but you're talking about an individual, and that doesn't always mean that individual is going to be playing on the best team in the league, or that they're going to be a winning group, or that he has an offensive line, or anybody else. The guy made everybody around him better, and he won what, 7 playoff games on the road in his 5 and straight through to the Super Bowl twice, and only played 1 home playoff game. Beat Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, beat Brett Favre in Green Bay, beat the Cowboys when they had won the NFC East and got the bye, and they all went to Mexico the week before because they were so confident they were going to beat the Giants. Beat Tom Brady back to back, basically, because Brady didn't go in the years in between, which I hadn't realized for a while. And again, if you're going to beat the guy that everybody says dominated that entire decade, and you're the guy that beat him twice, and you got the MVP, but again, I don't care about MVPs in the Super Bowl because it just means you play quarterback in the Super Bowl and you won the game. I don't understand it, but again, I'm going to read you 3 quarterback stats. Jay, you'll be good at this. You tell me who's in and who's not in. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
14 years, 33,462 yards, 200 touchdowns, 150 interceptions, 2 Super Bowls, 1 Super Bowl MVP. The next guy, 169 games, 33,000, 230 touchdowns, 107 interceptions, 1 Super Bowl MVP. The other guy, 57,000 yards, played 70 more games than those other 2 guys in the same amount of seasons, which means didn't miss any games. 236 touchdowns. I don't understand how anybody says there's a numbers issue. So tell me, out of those 3 guys, who's in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, I know the first 2 guys are in the Hall.
No, one of them's missing also, and one of them played for the Giants. So Steve Young, who only played 169 games in 15 years. Okay, Eli played 70 more games. That's 4.5 years of games. 4.5 more years of games in which he did pretty well. And he threw 26,000 more yards of passes and won 2 Super Bowl MVPs. Steve Young inherited a back-to-back Super Bowl winning group and lost, and took him 4 more years to get there. And only because he played the Chargers did they actually win the game and be able to throw 6 touchdown passes. Yeah, Jay, you could have thrown 6 touchdowns against the Chargers that year.
That year,
I will give you that one. So again, in 15 years, he plays 70 less games than Eli does, and throws for 25,000 less yards and 40 less touchdowns. And again, wins 1 Super Bowl in all that time against nobody, because there was nobody on that San Diego team. And so you're going to pick and choose. It's either going to be numbers, which he wins on, or you're going to take the decade and a half that he played and say, who else in the NFC would you talk about in that time? You talk about Colin Kaepernick. You're going to talk about anybody from any of those other teams, Robert Griffin. I mean, who were the other NFC quarterbacks that were dominant in that era? It's not about a domination throughout the history of football. You only play in your time. It's like baseball, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you say 10 years, there was nobody better than Keith Hernandez. Keith Hernandez should be in the Hall of Fame. Now, Don Mattingly was there, so they should both go, but that's another story. But that's how you measure that, right? You say Sandy Koufax only played for 8 years, but he was the most dominant pitcher for those 8 years. You don't say, oh, he only played 8 years. You can't put him in the Hall of Fame. He doesn't have the numbers. So you kind of picking and choosing numbers. What he did was special for that time period. And I don't know. I don't understand how you could even think that he's not going to get. But then again, like I said to you guys last night, I noticed I got no answers from. Hall of Fame voters, they have some issue with people. The guys that didn't vote for Piazza and then the week later said, oh, I should have. I was thinking of the steroid thing, even though it's never been proven and he's never got called before Congress or anything, but they didn't vote for him. Who didn't vote for Tom Seaver, for God's sakes? Who didn't vote for Ichiro this year? I mean, it's
Who
crazy.
didn't vote for Jeter, by the way, as well.
Didn't vote for Griffin Jr.
Yeah, they make themselves more important than they are, these writers, like they're going to prove something to somebody. Now, I understand guys like Eddie Murray not getting in because they said he was mean to every writer, but even that shouldn't matter, right?
Oh,
it doesn't mean you're not getting into the Life Hall of Fame. You get into the Baseball Hall of Fame, right? Pete Rose should be there because he was in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Had nothing to do with his personal life or whatever. Ty Cobb's there. Ty Cobb wasn't a friendly guy.
Ty Cobb was an asshole.
Exactly.
So, allegedly. I mean, this is
not allegedly. Not allegedly.
No, definitely not allegedly.
Racist
definitely
asshole.
not allegedly. Definitely not allegedly.
And he was unabashed about it.
But right, I mean, you got to you have to look at this in a certain way. And I just think that these guys, again, they try to make themselves better than they are. And then all of a sudden it'll come out, two other guys this week will say something stupid and go, yeah, I didn't vote for him because, I don't think it should be the first ballot. And well, then what's going to be your excuse down the road and again, is Phillip Rivers going to get in the Hall of Fame? Like, you guys are writing all these names down for next year. You're going to put Phillip Rivers in the Hall of Fame, who never won anything in his entire life, who had guys on his team that said, I'd rather be in the Hall of Fame than win a Super Bowl.
That's Cam Newton.
You never won a Super Bowl because you didn't have enough drive to do it. You had half your team sitting on the bench. You didn't make them better. So who out of those group in the next group? You can put Drew Brees. I have no problem putting Drew Brees in. But again, I have a feeling if you put the numbers up there in that context of those 10 years, they're pretty even. And again, he only won once. He had the greatest offensive mind as a coach and won one Super Bowl, right? So you got to get something for it. And I don't know why. I don't know why he didn't get as much thought as he should have.
And the thing that's always bothered me about the Pro Football Hall of Fame voting process and the writers and all that, and Joe, you may know this better than I do. I believe there's less guys on the voting committee for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There's less than 100, if I remember correctly. The Baseball Writers Association has close to 400 guys who vote on the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And the fact that the NFL, the Hall of Fame, is shrinking the number of guys that can be put on a ballot in any given year is not helping either. And these are things that I've never understood. And the fact that it doesn't seem like anybody on that selection committee ever reveals how they voted and why, where it seems like there's plenty of the more respected baseball writers do go out of their way to say, this is what I voted, this, and this, and here's why. Right. They're at least transparent about it, agree or disagree with them. I don't see any of that level of transparency on the Pro Football Hall of Fame side.
No.
I believe it's only 49, by the way, from what this Athletic article is saying.
Right. And it's like, again, I guess what it was too, the MVP, somebody put Lamar Jackson as their fifth choice. I'm not a big fan, as you know, but he's not number 5.
Oh.
Especially this year. How could he be your fifth choice for MVP? So again, guys have these ridiculous thought processes of
biases,
of what's important to them, or are they fans of other teams, or do they cover certain teams? I mean, again, like Jay said, we don't even know who most of these guys are, but it would be nice if they put something next to their name, and it's even with, MVP voting, Francesa used to go nuts, right? With the Heisman, because he was a Heisman voter. And he said, some guys are not sending in their ballots, which makes no sense at all. Then take your name. If you don't send it in, then you should lose your privilege completely.
Yeah, exactly.
And other guys are sending them in 5 weeks early. He's like, can we finish the season? Can we see what happens to the guy? Can we see who comes out of nowhere and dominates? And again,
Yep.
a lot of those things, especially in college, a lot of those things should be postseason included. Let them see what they can bring their team, especially now that there's 3 games. You may have to play 3 games in a playoff. Let's see if you're
Or
the guy
this
that
year for the
And
winner.
especially in college where, bowl game slash playoff game stats actually count
right
towards your
now they do.
overall
Yeah,
stats.
exactly. And again, so when things change, because all those things never used to count, now that they count, well, then let's figure that in. Like let's evolve with what's going on in the sport that you're covering,
Hmm.
right? Make that change so that it continues through. Because especially like you said, if you're going to play that many playoff games now in college, there may be somebody that suddenly becomes the leader and brings his team through, and that guy deserves to be considered for stuff. So
The only reason I would vehemently disagree on that is because then we would be giving that to like a select 4 to 5 people every single year,
It
especially if we
definitely
include that with the
can be in the
NFL.
NFL, yes.
So I think, but I think there's also people who mailed in Heisman votes way before even the conference championship games,
Definitely.
which you don't do,
Definitely.
because those are
just stupid.
those are games
I
that count
mean,
in
Yep.
terms of regular season. It's stupid. All right. With all that being said, let's get the train back on the track. And Anthony, what's your opinion on Eli Manning missing out on year one?
I texted you last night. I said I had a bad feeling that
I did too. I did too.
that Eli was going because I think I heard more and more when he was named as a finalist of the nations, kind of being more vocal and talking about and giving excuses as to why he's not a Hall of Fame quarterback. And I'm just looking at the numbers. I'm like, wait, he has 57,000 yards, which is seventh in the NFL all time, 366 touchdowns. At the time he retired, 7 seasons of at least 4,000 passing yards and 26 scores, including two 3-year runs from 2009, 2011, 2014, and 2016, and his Super Bowl postseason runs, 15 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, and obviously the one the Super Bowl 46 he threw for he averaged 300 yards a game, and still holds the record for the most postseason passing yards. In any postseason stretch, which happened at 2011 season. 27 fourth quarter comebacks and 37 game-winning drives, which is 13th all time. And 2 seasons with at least 6 comebacks under his belt. And I'm just looking at these numbers. I'm like, wait, if he's been one of the most clutch quarterbacks of all time, and remember, he's put up these passing yards with a variety of wide receivers. You think about a Plaxico Burress. You think about Monty Tuma. Then you got Hakeem Nicks, Mario Manningham, Victor Cruz, uh, Ruben Randall, and the list goes on and on with the different receivers he had to work with. Odell Beckham, as well. And I was like, wait, this is a guy who legitimately every year, Steve Smith, the other Steve Smith, by the way, this is a guy who literally made his players around him better. Jeremy Shockey's best season in 2005 was with Eli Manning as the quarterback. And I've mentioned Steve Smith, his lone Pro Bowl season with Eli Manning as the quarterback. Odell Beckham's best seasons in his career, Eli Manning was throwing the football to him. And I'm thinking about this. Obviously, the 2 Super Bowl runs, he beating Tom Brady not once but twice. But you think about the moments where he came up close in San Francisco, despite taking a beating from that 49er defense in the mud, leading his team to the NFC Championship win. And the one play stuck to my head was that laser of a pass he threw to Mario Manningham in the fourth quarter that gave the Giants the lead after the 49ers had went back on top. And obviously, the pass to David Tyree, the 38-yard pass to Mario Manningham in the Super Bowls. But then you think about him going into frigid Lambeau Field and was now the fourth coldest game in NFL history, and beating Brett Favre and basically ending his Packers career. Going into Green Bay, taking on a 15-1 Green Bay Packers and MVP Aaron Rodgers, and beating him and outplaying the league MVP in that that visit to Green Bay. think about the 2007 season going into Dallas, as Joe mentioned, beating Tony Romo and that star-studded Cowboy team that had 9 Pro Bowlers on their team, and the week before that, kind of exercising Giant Demons and beating Jeff Garcia in the wild card round. And I'm just thinking, like, wait a minute, this guy has been time and time again coming through in the clutch. Even 2016, when the Giants had the 26th ranked offense in the league, he still threw for over 4,000 yards and 21 touchdowns, and getting the Giants one last playoff run in his career. The consecutive game streak, the fact that he was always available, and the only time he finally misses a game, it was a coaching decision. It wasn't because of an injury. And I'm looking at all this, and I'm like, how do you leave a guy like this off of out of the Hall of Fame because of maybe some biased journalism? And I've seen it time and time again how you would see skeptics give the defense credit for the Giants 2 Super Bowls. And look, I was an intern and I covered the 2007 team as an intern. And in 2011, I actually this is the year I actually joined the show, by the way. I was writing about the 2011 team, and that defense was near the bottom of the league. I mean, they even had even had to work with the 32nd ranked run offense that season, and told limits to eliminate. So I honestly think that the committee absolutely dropped the ball on this one. It's going to get harder because you think about it. Drew Brees is going to be eligible next year for the first time. Philip Rivers is going to be eligible for the first time, and eventually Tom Brady is going to be eligible. And you got the wide receiver position in the Hall of Fame. Guys like Torrey Holt is still waiting for their names to be called. A guy like Fred Taylor, because it's this backlog of position players that the more first time eligibility players get on the ballot, the longer it takes for guys who've been on there 3, 4, 5 years to actually break through. So for me personally, I'm happy to see Jared Allen get in. I'm happy to see Sterling Sharp finally get his due. He was, without question, before the injury, one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League, bar none. But Eli Manning deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And it's just unfortunate that he didn't get in the first time. He handled, to his credit, he's handled it with class, as he always has done. But eventually, you hope he doesn't have to wait too long before he finally gets that knock on the door, and he's finally added to the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very interesting going forward. And when you look at the people who are up next year, and even Adam Vinatieri, one of the greatest kickers of all time, who made 2 Super Bowl winning field goals, not in the Hall of Fame. This is out of his first year. You have, I think, I don't know if you mentioned Larry Fitzgerald, but he is in next year. Obviously, you mentioned Brees, Jason Witten, one of the best tight ends in this position. Greg Olsen, also one of the best tight ends in this position. It's a lot. We'll get to more of that in a second. But Jay, you're up.
Yeah. When Rabbi and I were putting the show together, and he said, he wanted to do this segment because Eli was a finalist for this year's Hall of Fame class, and we were talking about angles. I said, maybe, but not on the first ballot based on the numbers. And now that the votes are in, my angle is now a fact as opposed to an opinion. But I'm not surprised for a number of reasons, and the reasons behind the numbers, which I'm going to get into. Some of them make the case as to why he wasn't enshrined with this class. Others make the case that he'll get that gold jacket eventually. As Joe noted, Eli's 117 and 117 one-loss record as the Giants quarterback is his stat most often cited as the reason that his overall career was mediocre, furthering a narrative against Eli that he was never viewed as one of the top quarterbacks of his era. But a quarterback's one-loss record is even less worthless as a stat than a starting pitcher's one-loss record. The two do not compare, despite some folk attempting to do that. Here are the regular season numbers that the anti-Hall contingent uses to why Eli shouldn't be in Canton. 60.3% completion percentage, 57,023 passing yards, but that's 11th all time.
That's all.
241.6 yards per game, 22nd all time, 7 yards per attempt. Yeah, it's 99th. 366 touchdown passes, that's 11th all time. 84.1 passer rating, only 66th all time. But 37 game-winning drives is 12th all time. Only a four-time Pro Bowler, never an All-Pro. But when he retired, he was seventh all-time in completions. His passing yards and touchdowns were also seventh all-time. But, here's the other thing. Manning was the epitome of the Tomlinism that the best ability is availability. He never missed a game because of injury in his entire career, making 210 consecutive starts from 04 to 17, third longest streak in NFL history behind Brett Favre and the aforementioned Phillip Rivers. And even when that streak ended, it wasn't because of injury, and we're not going to rehash that drama. And that leads to the question of how much do postseason numbers and heroics matter, especially those that happened during the runs up to his 2 Super Bowl wins and MVP awards, and how much weight should they be given when pondering whether a player is deserving of a gold jacket. And yes, there are plenty of quarterbacks from that era that have more impressive regular season resumes. And yes, Eli's overall postseason numbers are similar across the same stats as the regular season numbers I just mentioned. But Eli raised his game in the biggest moments on the NFL's biggest stage. In 12 postseason games all across his entire career, 60.5% completion percentage, 2,815 passing yards, 23rd all time, 234.6 yards per game, 29th all time, 7 yards per attempt, 46th all time, 18 touchdowns, 25th all time, tied, 87.4 passer rating, tied for 27th all time, ironically with Peyton. 5 game-winning drives, tied 4th all times with Joe Montana, 2 Super Bowl wins, 2 Super Bowl MVPs. Brady with 5, Montana and Mahomes with 3 are the only ones with more. Bart Starr and Terry Bradshaw are the only multiple winners with 2, multiple Super Bowl winners with 2 each, with Super Bowl MVP winners with 2 each, same as Eli. But Eli also completed, as Anthony kind of discussed, 2 of the signature passes in Super Bowl history. The one that became David Tyree's helmet catch in the game-winning drive of Super Bowl 42.
42.
Yep. And the absolute, and Anthony, I literally had this written down, laser of a 38-yard pass to Mario Manningham on the game-winning drive 4 years later in Super Bowl 46, which is arguably one of the greatest throws in Super Bowl history. Check out Eli's numbers from those 2 upsets over the massively favored Brady Belichick Patriot teams. In Super Bowl 42, beat Brady's Patriots 17-14, threw the game-winning touchdown pass to Plexico Burress with 35 seconds left. He was 19 of 34 in that game, tick under 56% completion, 255 yards, 7.5 per attempt, 2 scores, 1 pick, 87.3 passer rating. 4 years later, beat Brady's Patriots 21-17 on the game-winning drive. He was 5 of 6 for 64 yards with 40, getting the winning score with 57 seconds left. Overall for that game, 30 of 40, 75% completion, 296 yards through the air, 7.4 per attempt, 1 score, no interceptions, 103.7 passer rating. He won those 2 Super Bowls in 4 years, 15 touchdown passes. Anthony, I believe it was against only 1 interception during those postseason runs.
Off of Steve Smith's hands.
Okay, there you go. But that run, 5 wins on the road, Joe, as you talked about, 1 home playoff game. Eli's former coach, Tom Kaplan, had an interesting quote, and here it is. In my opinion, Eli, is the greatest big game quarterback that I've ever been around. He's performed incredibly well under those circumstances. But is that enough to eventually get him into Canton? Eli is the only Hall of Fame eligible player with that level of Super Bowl accomplishment on his resume and isn't in the Hall. I say this whenever we talk about the postseason and all the sports we cover. Your stars need to play like stars in the playoffs. And very few things define that adage better than Eli taking out the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl. Another adage is Hall of Famers are the players you can't write the history of the NFL without. Eli taking down a dynasty kind of defines that as well. Pro Football Reference has a metric called the Hall of Fame Monitor, which is designed to estimate a player's chances of making the Pro Football Hall of Fame using what they call approximate value. It's a metric that tries to put a single number on the seasonal value of a player at any position from any year, utilizing Pro Bowls, All-Pro selections, championships, and various other statistical milestones. The quarterback list has the top 250 Hall of Fame Monitor rated players who played quarterback from 1955 onward for at least 50 career games. A score of 100 is around the average of a modern era inductee across all positions. The average Hall of Fame quarterback has a score of 108. Eli has a score of 86.01. Here are the quarterbacks in the Hall with lower scores than Eli. Kenny Stabler, 82.2. Sonny Jurgensen, 78.57. Bob Greasy, 73 flat. Warren Moon, 71.3. Joe Namath, 70 flat. Len Dawson, 69.74. Troy Aikman, 64.28. Jim Kelly, 59.1. All are from eras before Eli, and all were retired by 2000 at the latest, where there was, and those were eras where there was significantly less passing. Only Aikman with 3 has more Super Bowl wins than Eli, but all have at least as many Pro Bowls, if not many more. Eli does have a higher score than such contemporaries as Matthew Stafford, 84.23, the aforementioned Cam Newton, 70.5, Carson Palmer, 55.37, Tony Romo, 45.78. Mike Tanier, who was a longtime NFL writer for Football Outsiders, New York Times, Bleacher Report, among other outlets, did a piece on Manning's 2025 Hall of Fame chances at the end of January for his Substack, Too Deep Zone, based on conversations with 60 of the 50 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Selection Committee before their annual meeting, which took place in mid-January. Here are some of the responses those committee members gave Tanier when he posed the question about Eli's Canton worthiness. First guy, get back to me in 5 years. Seriously, we got a lot of guys to get into the Hall of Fame, and he can wait. Committee member number 2, somebody's going to have to convince me that he belongs in the Hall of Fame at all. Committee member number 3, I think he's a Hall of Famer eventually. If we're talking 7 or 8 years from now, we're talking about putting Eli Manning in the Hall of Fame for 2 Super Bowl MVPs and creating some of the greatest moments in the history of the game. I'll buy that. That's cool. But don't try to tell me that he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of his generation. All of these are legitimate stances on whether or not Eli deserves to be enshrined in Canton. That's how polarizing this conversation is with regards to him, depending on who you are and where you are. And the numbers that I threw at you can just as easily make the case for yes as they do for no. The take by that last committee member is kind of where I land as well. I think Eli gets in eventually, but unfortunately, I think it's going to take a good long while, as there are plenty of arguably more deserving candidates ahead of him coming on the ballot in the next few years.
So, Jay, who do you give credit to for things like, and again, everybody, again, postseason, no question, right? If that's all it is, that's fine. Who gets credit for going to New England and stopping their home win streak?
Yeah.
Over 2? Who gets stuck for going against Baltimore and running for 300 yards against them when they hadn't given up 100 yards in 2.5 years? Who gets credit for beating New England, again, stopping their unbeaten streak in the Super Bowl? Who gets credit? Like, is that Tom Kaplan? Are we gonna put Kaplan in next year and say because he did all these things? Because Tom Kaplan came back, and I mean, all of those things that they did together don't happen without Eli Manning. If he has Tom Kaplan, he knows that.
Right.
And those are the guys that I would rather listen to than some clown that says, talk to me in 7 years. Guess what, pal? I don't
You're going to be dead in 7 years, most likely, if you're an NFL Hall of Fame
competitor. What you're talking about. Just because you write for somebody else and you're a team and you're a football writer doesn't mean you know anything about the history of the game or what's going on. I guarantee you half of those guys don't know anything about those games where he did all those things. And you got to also remember the other thing with Eli is Tiki Barber was 72% of their offense the years before he retired. Eli walks in, all of a sudden that's gone, and he has to do something. And what does he do? He takes him to the Super Bowl the next year. So,
I don't disagree with you on any individual point. Eli's candidacy was always going to be one that polarized people on one end of the conversation or another, depending on what you hold as your personal Hall of Fame criteria. And Eli is one of those guys where his highest highs happened on the biggest stage in the biggest moments in NFL history. But other than that, there were definitely periods of his career where you go, Some of that Eli? Yeah, but was some of that
so I think
surrounded with too? Absolutely.
we've had this conversation before in past years, and I think it's
Mhm.
the reason he's polarizing is because he came up in the era of fantasy football. He was a terrible fantasy football quarterback,
Without a doubt.
without a doubt, the worst at where his brother was one of the best, right?
And that's
You could
also
always
that's also the polarizing part of it. He gets unfairly compared to
right to his
Peyton,
brother.
even though their skill sets are different, their situations for their entire careers were different.
Mhm.
I think we should move on because there is a curfew on these shows.
Wrap
Only
it
thing
up.
I'm gonna
Wrap it up for us, Rabbi.
I'll just be very quick since you've said literally every point I was going to possibly say in this segment. If you compare the numbers, I want to mention three guys who came in on their first year of eligibility: Jim Kelly, Troy Aikman, and Warren Moon. I know Aikman has the postseason stats, but he almost had 25,000 less yards and 150 less touchdowns in his career. Probably one of the worst regular season quarterbacks outside of Namath to make the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. You look at Warren Moon. He had no playoff experience at all. Never made the playoffs. 8,000 less yards, 75 less touchdowns. What are we doing here? And Jim Kelly, who I always attribute Super Bowl success to, 20,000 less yards, 129 less touchdowns. What are we doing here in terms of that? That makes me think that Eli should be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but the new rules are also very annoying, only having between 3 and 5 modern era players every single year. But the one thing I came back to is Kurt Warner, the guy who he actually backed up in the beginning of the 2006 season, 2005 season actually, and no 2004 season. I'm sorry, 2004. Got that now. But you look, Warner had, and Warner, by the way, Eli played 14 years. Warner played 8 years and didn't play them all at his greatest peak. He probably only played 5 years at his peak. And if you look at the numbers, 25,000 less yards, 156 less touchdowns, but a quarterback rating that's 9 points higher. Eli's is 84.1 in his career.
And some of the greatest wide receivers in the history of the NFL.
Absolutely some of the greatest wide receivers in the history of the NFL. But again, the numbers are staggering in terms of that. 28, 15 yards, 18 touchdowns, 87.4 quarterback rating for Manning in the postseason. Warner tops that in all levels, 39, 52, 31 touchdowns, and 102.8. Kind of evens out the fact, again, that he had some of the greatest wide receivers in the history of NFL, but it's really who do you give the blame to? The Super Bowl performance.
And lost to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl.
Did lose to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. A shitty Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, mind you, by the way. Second year Tom Brady, technically, first year as a starter. But Warner's numbers in terms of like his Super Bowls, he has some of the modern records for passing yards in Super Bowls. What I'm saying is that's who I would compare the career to. What Warner did more in the postseason, did in terms of numbers in the postseason. Obviously, Manning has 2 Super Bowls, so Warner's 1. And the numbers of Warner being a great level quarterback, but for a much shorter period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Warner waited 3 years to get in. I would have to say it'll probably, realistically, in my opinion, that's how long you have to wait for Manning to get it. You're going to have to kind of get into a season because, again, Drew Brees is easily going to go into the Hall of Fame next year. I think Fitzgerald is easily, and now you only have 2 spots left. And Terrell Suggs is still looking to get into the Hall of Fame. And again, one of the greatest kickers of all time, and Ed Vinatieri is also looking to get into the Hall of Fame too. But overall, all I want is this. Please put Eli in before Phillip Rivers, and if he gets it, and please put him in before that fraud Cam Newton gets into the Hall of Fame. Yeah. Okay.
And by the way, Jay, the 2 quarterbacks that I did the stats on were Steve Young and Phil Simms.
Oh, Simms.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, I knew Simms was the other one.
Has the exact same stats to the number as Steve Young, and never gets talked about.
That's interesting, Rabbi. It's interesting that you use Kurt Warner on Pro Football References that Hall of Fame Predator chart. Warner is the next guy up above Eli, literally 1 spot above him. His number is 88.78 to Eli's 86.01, and Warner is in.
So many numbers in my head. I'm going to have to go back to math class at the end of the night. All right. Time for a quick rant cut for time because of that argument. I'm kidding. It was the same. It was the same size either way. So sit down, be humble, world. Here is my rant on Super Bowl LIX, LIX. I'm sorry, 59. Listen, I understand. You, the viewer out there, you, the listener out there. I understand. I get your frustration. The Chiefs get the calls. The Chiefs always win. Patrick Mahomes gets the luck. I hate Philadelphia. I understand everything. And if you actually watch the show that me and Joe do this year, we do question some of the Chiefs calls in certain ways, but you know what? I get everything, but I get you to a certain point. Millions of Americans, hundreds of millions of Americans, myself included, stay with me here, will watch the Super Bowl on Sunday night. And honestly, most of the time it's regardless of who's in it and who's not. Two major things, salute if you have it, make me believe that all of the "we're called to the Super Bowl" friends of mine is complete nonsense. And hey, if you like that, DVR the Puppy Bowl and watch that 4 times in a row on Sunday. Anthony might be doing that. I might be doing that later after the Super Bowl, but hey, that seems nice. According to industry sources, and I have enough sources apparently, the Chiefs and Bills game averaged 57.7 million viewers almost 2 weeks ago. Yep. No AFC Conference Championship game has ever done that number in the modern era. The AFC is 100% more dangerous than it was 20 years ago, by the way. Jalen Hurts is only the third quarterback to start twice for the NFC in the Super Bowl since 2002. 20 different quarterbacks have started around that time. Mahomes is the 4th multi-time starter, and you know how many quarterbacks have started in that same time period? A grand total of 7. SEVEEN. That's how dominant Casey and why the AFC has become more appointment viewing than the NFC. AFC got better ratings, got stronger ratings this year in most cases, and NFC was down all across the board. But you remember between 1984 and 1996, when the NFC won every Super Bowl, they won 13 in a row. And I unfortunately do, and those days are long gone. Excuse me while I go cry over those terrible days.
You know, it's funny.
I'm back. Hold on. It's not done.
Okay, I thought you were done there for a second. That would have been an exit.
It is. Now for number 2. This sports world is, whether you like it or not, a dynasty-rich world now. In baseball, the Dodgers have 2 titles in 5 years, and I would put some money on 3 and 6 unless something happens. Sorry. In hockey, we just went through the Lightning winning 2 straight Stanley Cups in 2020 to 2021, and we could have easily seen 3. Basketball, we saw a Warriors and Cavs rivalry that went for 4 straight finals between 15 and 18, and I think, considering the ratings that the NBA seemingly have, they would like to see that now rather than what they currently have. And we just saw a repeat in college basketball in UConn. I wish I had edited this before the night was done. And we saw college football see Alabama and Clemson make the title game 3 out of 4 years of the last decade. So where are we at, Chief Hater Mafia? With all of that being stated, you hate dynasties. Are you never going to watch all of those sports again? Every single one of those sports again? I didn't think so. Move on, shut up. Whether you are at a party watching Kendrick Lamar on Sunday or are there to watch Philly try to win their 2nd title in 7 years, or if you're there to watch the commercials, or if you're there to enjoy all the wings possible, you're most likely watching the Super Bowl this Sunday. And if you're not, if you want to tell me the NFL is rigged, and if that the league is better without Mahomes being good, or if you don't want to see Taylor Swift in the suite, possibly giving a marriage proposal to Travis Kelce at halftime, as we've learned today, or anything else, let me see that you're actually not going to watch Sunday and what you've done instead on Sunday, and go through it instead of taking your word when you say it, because most of the possibility, you're wrong and you're lying.
You know, it's funny. Rabbi and I talked about this in pre-production, and you know, y'all. All I'm going to say on that is, y'all know I want to see history get made. I've already talked about said history for both the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes in our prediction segment. If you're a true football fan, a true lover of the history of the game, you want to see it too. And for those who want to push the Chiefs fatigue narrative, I understand where you're coming from, but the viewership numbers don't lie. Rabbi gave you the AFC title game numbers, but KC set a Super Bowl viewership record last year when an audience of 123.4 million tuned in to watch them beat the Niners in overtime. That topped the previous record of 115.1 million viewers who tuned in to watch them beat the Eagles 2 years ago. As Andrew Marchand of The Athletic said in the piece he co-wrote with Richard Deitch today, quote, viewers like big name teams, and Kansas City is going for history, 3 Super Bowl championships in a row, with maybe the greatest quarterback ever. There may be some hate watching, but the people who have such strong feelings are watching no matter what. I agree with him. Y'all can complain all you want, but either way, for whatever the reason, come Sunday night at approximately 6:30 p.m. Eastern, you'll be watching. So to borrow the phrase my partner gave me when he described this rant to me in pre-production, shut up and deal with what you're watching.
I have to watch because I have to critique the officials. I do a show on Monday that makes me do that, so I have no choice.
Contractual obligations, Joseph, I understand that.
As a matter of fact, I texted 2 guys and I said, do you guys want to come over and critique the officials with me this Sunday? That's how we're going to watch it. So.
I'll be critiquing them in my mind probably, and then putting it on paper later since I'll be with a lot.
Oh, you're going to critique them out loud to me because I'll be sitting next to you.
Well, there's also other people in the room besides us, so we're going to try that. I have a wife. I have a wife who doesn't want to hear this all of the time. Anthony, go ahead.
I guess I'll be texting both of you then if you're.
You will,
and we will be sitting in the same room.
Go ahead.
I think I like this. Like the Chiefs are basically what the New England Patriots were for so many years. It's just people like when you get good, when you're good, and you're that feel good story. Remember Patrick Mahomes post Super Bowl? The Chiefs was a great story. They win their first championship in over 50 years, and suddenly they're back in the Super Bowl, and again, and they're winning, and it's basically jealousy. It's a case of jealousy. It's a case of whenever I hear the term, "Oh, this game is rigged," and they get all the calls, that's always to me. That's translation to my team is not good enough to beat them, so I gotta find another excuse outside of my team can't beat them. Let's blame the referees. Now, granted, the referees, the officials, have they been great all the time? Absolutely not. We have seen them blown calls all the time, but look. I'm old enough to see people. Just remember seeing fans complain about Jordan getting every call in the book, and the Bulls constantly, and the rest always in the Bulls' pocket, and even the Lakers, or how the Yankees always win the close games, and the umpires missing calls, and on and on. It's the same thing. It's just louder because we live in the era of social media. And it's like, look, if you're tired of the Kansas City Chiefs, beat them. Simple as that. And until a team figure that out, maybe the Eagles do it on Sunday. The Chiefs are gonna beat them. But guess what? Patrick Mahomes is not retiring tomorrow, Monday morning. So the Chiefs will be right back in the same situation, contending for a Super Bowl next year. It's a thought of. It's taking fun away from just being a fan and watching the game and watching 2 teams go at it. When you see the incels of the world waiting to jump on social media immediately over a 50-50 call and saying, "Oh, the refs are in the Chiefs." Can you imagine? My biggest gripe is Super Bowl media would just become a circus because the Chiefs had to literally deal with this question numerous times throughout the night. Of the refs being in their pockets. It's getting to a point where it's like, would I be surprised if the Chiefs come out and beat the hell out of the Eagles just to prove a point? But I just got like this. Excuse me. That it's just gotten so out of hand. It's like, can we just enjoy watching the game? Get back to wanting to watch a football game. Yes, we're going to get 50-50 calls one way or the other. And I think some of the reason why the Chiefs have been so good in close game situations is because psychologically they've already won the game when the opponents were worried about the officiating and everything else could go wrong instead of the Chiefs themselves. That's how good teams win. That's how great teams become champions. And until teams figure it out, they're going to keep bitching and moaning on social media as always.
Anthony, what's the old adage? Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Absolutely, exactly, Jay. You took it right up. You took the words right out of my mouth.
I think the one thing that I understand about people is maybe it is a good narrative to have like a team on the mountaintop and then other teams trying to climb up that mountain. But when Jack falls down the hill more than 5 times in a row, then it gets to be kind of a different story. But again, some people like what you're seeing with history, and some people are not Yankees fans. So that really is it. For some reason, I'm kind of falling to both. So
Well done, Rabbi.
all right, everyone enjoy this Super Weekend, Super Sunday. Everything's super out there. But for now, for Anthony Strait, a very, very happy Joe Tufaro, a much happier Jay Kaplan. You're lucky I'm humble. Catch us, by the way, by the way, catch me and Joe for the season finale of the Official Review podcast. By the way, that'll be coming up this upcoming Monday. I am Steven Rabinowitz. I am not a very happy camper about a certain thing, but I'm still looking to take the over for the national anthem on Sunday. Long and strong, baby. Long and strong. YouTube.com/On the Sports Lines on demand. Facebook.com/On the Sports Lines live. And Jay, do yours.
Our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each news show like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out this week. I have posted a link to a story by Jake Seeley of The Athletic, ranking the best and worst commercials of this year's Super Bowl based on the ones released prior to the game. He's got a ton there already, and he'll be adding to the story throughout the night as more and more commercials air on during the game. The When Harry Met Sally Hellman's Mayo ad with Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan with a cameo by a famous special guest who gets to utter the famous line from the movie tops my list at the moment. The piece is well done and worth the read.
And by the way, if you're annoyed about us talking NBA and NFL all the time, we're doing it all again next week. So tune in. We'll see you for On the Sports Lines in 1 week. Good night, everybody.
Go to the Super
Good,
Bowl.
everyone.